Good morning. My name is Tom Bailey. I've been facilitating the automation, the BladeLogic track, right? We've got a number of sessions today. My colleague, who's Monica in the back of the room, who's been running on the Cloud Lifecycle Management track, we've been handing out these nifty little cards that represent the different sessions, both for automation as well as for cloud. I think we've had pretty good penetration of these cards. If you haven't received one, stop by. I'm delighted to bring Bank of Montreal back to the stage. We had Soren Manta this morning presenting on compliance and how the bank has implemented compliance across both general provisioning and configuration and compliance, but also their entry into cloud. Today we're going to be talking about DevOps. Now yesterday, if you had the opportunity to sit with Chris Keen, we heard about SecOps, right? Security operations. This is the historical demarcation between security as well as operations and the split and the divide between the two groups. Very similar setup for DevOps, right? Where you've got development and then it's the progression of applications from development into pre-production and then into production, and then the operations team, of course, which has to manage that. So Jamil comes to us from the bank. He's got 20 years of experience from the Bank of Montreal. He's spearheaded the DevOps projects at the bank, and we're absolutely delighted to have him here today. So Jamil, I pass to you.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, BMC, for having me present the work that we're doing at Bank of Montreal. And we started on this journey back a few years ago with the BSM program, where we had on our three-year on our roadmap, on the third year, doing automated application deployment. And we were scratching our head, what is automated application deployment? Then we started hearing about the DevOps concepts, and we saw a video from Fred Breton, who was with his robotic voice about the RLM solution, and I fell in love with that solution, and we said, okay, we got to implement it at Bank of Montreal. Just a quick intro about Bank of Montreal. We're a bank that's over 180 years old. We're located in Canada. We're one of the 10th largest banks in North America. We have operations in the United States, down in the Midwest. We have operations in China, in Europe, and we're fairly large, and considering how spread out we are, there is a lot of regulatory demands on us. So what could seem as a simple solution for implementing automated application deployment becomes very complex, because we have to think about stuff like segregation of duty, info security, and not breaking any of these processes, and adhering to ITIL processes as well, because we're one of the, I think, level 4 ITIL shop, where everything has to be tracked, everything has to be managed. So this is a quick chart around our footprint and where we're located in North America. And we recently bought a bank in MNI, and we merged it with our Harris Bank in Chicago. So transformation to automated application deployment, it's a big journey. It's part of the DevOps journey. And this slide is my interpretation around DevOps. Because I don't know, I'm probably like the rest of you. When it comes to DevOps, I describe it as this concept that lives in the hippie of IT, and everybody has a definition about it, what it is, but no one really has nailed it down and saying this is DevOps. So for me, DevOps is three things that we have to do to get closer to the business. Is continuous integration, continuous delivery, and continuous testing. Continuous integration is the ability to bridge the gap and go into the SDLC and hook up with our development partners. Continuous delivery is the concept of, on an automated basis, to always trust that code that we receive, that we get from that continuous integration, and give it a free pass all the way to production. And continuous testing and the feedback loop is to tell us how we're doing from a quality perspective. Where we started in the middle, around automated deployment to enable that whole process. And it's a long journey that's going to take us multiple years to achieve the full vision. However, we have to start somewhere, and I think we thought the best place to start is with automating the application deployment to be able to start with building the practice. How we set up the transformation, we set up the transformation as moving people from being deployers of their build guides, and I'll explain that a little bit, to enablers of automated deployment. I don't know if people here have the same experience as we do. When our TDev partners comes and they ask us to do an implementation, they give us a 300-page document with step-by-step instructions about what we need to do in order to implement an application. And if we deviate by a word from the deployment guide, they come back and they look at us and say, you messed up and you broke the application. And just imagine how tedious that is, how risky it is. And every time we go to a different environment, there is a nuance, there is difference between the environment that the implementer keep in his head. Oh, yeah, I know that environment is a bit different. I know that. It's not in the build guide, but don't worry about it. I know it. So it never gets into that build guide. So there is no feedback loop. So our transformation is to basically take our processes and put them into the automated capability and move away from the manual activities. So this is just a description of the business case that we started to build together. As you notice, it doesn't have numbers of how many people we're going to save or how much time we're going to save. It was a lot of tacit information around the business case. And the way we've been approaching the whole implementation and the transformation is learning, unpeeling the onion, learning about what we're doing. And as we're learning how we're doing it, what we're doing and how we're doing it, then we can document the business case and figure out how we're going to achieve these savings or productivity or agility pieces. And I'll walk you through some of the achievements that we did recently that's going to help us measure that benefit. From a tools perspective, it looks better here. We're going with the RLM solution. We're using the whole ecosystem of the BMC suite. And I have a few colleagues from Bank of Montreal that are sitting in the back room, Soreen, Patrick, that run the BSA solution. And without that BSA solution, I can't do what I need to do because they provide for me the infrastructure from a security perspective, RBAC controls, ensuring that the right people are getting to the right server and the right automation is getting to the right server. So from an ecosystem around the tool, we're using RLM. On top of that screen, what I'm showing in here is the RPM piece. And the way I socialize the RPM piece as being a portal for implementers to use to deploy their applications. And below the arrow line, I have a whole complex ecosystem of tools that are working together to abstract all the and deal with the complexity for the automated deployment. And my team is focused around building that whole ecosystem for each application and onboarding one application at a time. In order to do what we need to do, we had to transform. So we're IT ops, and I think Soreen mentioned it for those that attended Soreen's presentation this morning. Since last year, we started the transformation within IT ops, and we became a development shop. And we built an organization, and we hired people within these organizations, and we gave them new titles. So now they moved from being sysadmins to automation developers, to automation release coordinators, managing our media libraries. So it's a full transformation that we had to do, and we built an organization in order to support the automated application deployment. And that was the key factor that helped us move into do what we're doing today. Otherwise, we would not have been able to transform the organization. Counting on finger and toes and begging for resources and asking, we're doing transformation, can you please do the development for us? That doesn't work. We had to focus people and to do that and make it part of their job and actually do some additional training that we're not good at before. So we had to take people and we trained them on PowerShell, we trained them on Bash, we trained them on all kind of scripting, RPD, RPM, and transform the way they do work. So integrating with the SDLC. When we started our journey with automated application deployment, when we looked at it, one of the things that we thought is we're going to create the RPM portal and get every implementer to use the RPM portal and do the application deployment. And we're going to take the knowledge from our IT ops people, put it into that portal, and drive that implementation. Now, one of the things that we realized quite quickly, our IT ops groups do not have the knowledge about how to deploy the application. It's actually our TDEV partners that know how to deploy the application. We've just been, for so many years, been trained to take instructions and to do the implementation the way they tell us to do it. We lost the ability to think on our own how we should be deploying application. So what we had to do in order to succeed in what we're trying to do is get closer to our TDEV partners. So we created an application deployment, fairly simple application. It was a WAS application that is part of an agile project. And what they wanted to do is deploy code about twice a day in development, once to twice a week in the QA environment, and they wanted quick reaction time. So we said, OK, we have this great tool. It's automation. Why don't you use it? They started using the RPM tool, and then they went back, and I was thinking of my conversation with Fred yesterday where I told him I'm not using, for that use case, RPM anymore. And one of their feedback, they told me, you know, Jamil, this is a great tool. It does what we need it to do. It remembers the password. I can go on vacation now. I don't have to sleep at the office to do a deployment. I can have lunch. I can have a coffee. Because I don't have, once I taught it how to do things, it can do it on its own. However, what I used to take me 3 clicks to do the implementation, now it's taking me 7 clicks. I'm slower by about 4 or 5 minutes. If I'm doing 2, 3 deployments a day, that's slowing me by 10 to 15 minutes, and that was kind of my coffee break. So I need something faster. So I took the team, and I said, OK, so they do it in 2, 3 clicks. We're doing it in 7 clicks. Let's figure out a way on how to do it in 0 clicks, 0 manual effort, 0 manual intervention. And we started talking to all the technical people within BMC. And what we figured out that the tool has great API capability. Anything that you can do on the interface, you can do it via command line. So we set it up in a way that we integrated with their software development lifecycle. And looking at the chart from here, what we started is they have, in that particular use case, they have a TFS server. So the TFS server kicks a job out, creates the build. They move the build into our definitive media library. I'm using, in this case, Artifactory. And they store the file in here. Then they leave us a trigger file, the name of the environment where they want to deploy. We have, in that ecosystem, we have the automation tools involved. And this is multiple tools that are working together to achieve that result that we're looking for. Remember, being a bank, one of the things that we can't do, and that was a big problem for us that we needed to solve, if I have a build server in a development environment, that build server cannot initiate any conversation to a production level scale tool because that violates info security and segregation of duty and all kind of requirements. So I can't go this way. So what I had to do, I had to come this way to find out if they have a new build. So we used BSA for that. So BSA now runs every 2 minutes, runs an NSH job, checks for a new file, and checks for a trigger file. And as soon as BSA finds the trigger file and that build file, immediately initiate the deployment by calling the RLM solution, say, I have that information for you, go ahead and deploy it. And the trigger file where I was told, it's the development environment where you should be deploying it to. And immediately, the automation follows that track and deploys into that development environment. That was perfect. That was easy. So I can use the credentials that are very open, developers' credentials, to deploy into the development environment. But then we wanted to go to QA. Going to QA was a little bit more complex. And QA is the way we broke the problem down is The developer makes a request to a QA lead that they have a new build. And usually that is happened via a ticket coming from ClearQuest, for example, with an email to say, to the QA manager, I have a new build. The QA manager owns the environment. He's the one that would say, yeah, I'm ready to receive that QA build. I'm ready to receive that new build to deploy in QA. The custodian of the change is IT ops. That's segregation of duty, because developers are not allowed to deploy into QA environment. Otherwise, we'll be violating Fed regulatory rules, and we'll get slapped on the hand for having a developer deploying into QA. So what we changed the custodianship. We changed the custodianship from being with an IT ops person to an automation tool. But what we needed to do is we need to inject a step in the process with a break into it. So we can't get it to let it go continuous, because we have to ensure that there is an authorization that allows us to do that deployment. So the QA manager at that point receives an email that says, please authorize the deployment. And we integrated that into the automation tool where they have to go into it. They click, they log into the automation tool, in this case, RPD. They authorize the deployment. What we're working on now, is actually this should be dotted, is an automated CR would be created immediately to flag that there is a change that happened to a CI in QA. So we're a few weeks away. Patrick and I are negotiating the timelines. I think it's a few weeks. I'm hoping in a few weeks we can create an automated CR. Immediately after the authorization happens, the automation tool picks up that information and deploys this to that QA environment using a completely different set of credentials that's only allowed to deploy into QA, does not allow to implement into production. The next level of complexity that we're working on is going to production. Going to production, what we're lacking in this model, we're lacking trust. And what I mean by we're lacking trust is we don't trust yet the code that has everything that it needs in order to go straight through with a continuous deployment to production. We don't know in the source code, for example, that they followed the coding standard. We don't know that they added performance metrics to that code. We don't know that they have injecting the monitoring and the logging in that code as well. So we don't have a level of trust. We don't know if they ran their unit testing and they ran their regression testing. It's all manual at this point. We have to take it for confidence word saying we did it. So there is no trust, so we have to break that process here. We can't do it in an automated fashion. However, we cannot go back to manual deployment anymore, because if we go back to manual deployment, 6 months down the road, after we've done 150 deployment in these slower environment, no one knows how to deploy it in production anymore. So what we have to do now, so we go back to the RPM piece. RPM piece, which has all the steps required for doing the deployment. At the bottom end of it, there is RPD doing the actual deployment. Now an implementer can log into RPM and say, trigger that automation deployment into that production environment. And at this point, it's using the same exact code that we have in the underlying infrastructure or underlying tool that does the automation, and it deploys it into production after the CR has been approved, using the credential of someone who has only access to production. So this is the big use case that we have. We did one application for that one, and we started talking a bit about it. And now I have a lineup of people saying, please sign me up. I want to be next on it. It sounds so simple, so easy to do, but because of all these environments that we have, becomes a little bit more complex to implement. Going to the next slide. So these are the challenges that I listed around barriers for implementing. I spoke to those. I can go through them again if you'd like me, or I can leave them here for a bit. We talk about traceability. We want to be able to know who's doing what to the environment. So we use remedy change records to track changes in the QA environment. Environment ownership and segregation of duty. Challenges to enable automation with QA approvals. This is having the approvals in place. security and access control. Could have not have done it without BSA and RBAC. Because of BSA and RBAC, we can log, we can trace who's doing what to the machine at what time. And if we had the DCA, we could have done a lot more with it. So that's coming. And then the communication policies around dealing with firewall rules, complex network policies, and we leveraged finally NSA's jobs to monitor that piece. Any questions on this before I go through the video? I think I have a video coming up here. It's around how we did it. This shows the whole ecosystem, how it works together. It just goes a little bit fast, so I'll be pausing it to talk about what's going on. So this is BSA, and this is here. Oops, why did it go to the previous screen? Do I have to go? Let me start it from here. OK, so this is BSA, and it shows that files that get picked up. Sorry. OK, have to let it go and can't touch the mouse. So tech support, I guess I need. This is moving on its own to the next level. Let's go into the next screen. Playing video. OK. OK, let's go into the next screen. It doesn't want to do it. We'll try to figure out in a different way later on. This is a snapshot about our success and what we have done so far. We started our practice back in March, almost, when Sorin tapped me on the shoulder and he told me, Jamil, I want you to run this organization for us. I started with one person on the team, and we built it up to go up to nine people. Now I have 9 people part of the team within 6 months, and all of that taking ramp-up training where we have to train everyone, measure the progress of how they're doing it, and their capabilities. We've managed to develop automations for 18 applications in a very short period of time. From those 18 applications, we have 9 that are operational at this point that are being used for automated application deployment. One big win that we have an application that manages our online business banking application. We have one automation for online business banking. Online business banking is a critical application for Bank of Montreal that moves funds from our customers to their suppliers, and millions of dollars pass through that channel to facilitate these payments. And it takes, on average, for doing an upgrade to OLBB, just for the application perspective, without any infrastructure, about 18 hours to do a change to it. The assumption always has been, I was told, it takes 2 to 3 hours to do just the change, and the remainder of the hours is to test the changes that have been done and deal with finger fumbles, quality issues, and so forth. The application has about 17 environments in it. Before they get to production, they have to deploy about 17 times in pre-production environments. It's made up of WAS 6 platform, WAS Portal, IHS, Jasper, Spinego, Tivoli security module to it, LDAP integration, database integrations. And when we started to do the automated application deployment, the first time we ran that test, it took us about 6 hours to do the deployment using automation without any testing. And as we kept going from environment to environment, we kept stumbling around these issues where the implementer would say, yes, I know there is an issue with this environment, let me fix it. And that would take an hour and a half to deal with the issue, have the workaround, and then come back to the automation and do the implementation. So we started integrating all of these nuances into the automation tool, because RPD is I think, one of the few tools out there in the industry that has a configuration management systems inside of it. So I can know about the environment. I can know about what servers that environment runs into it. I can know about the parameters. If someone has installed an application in there and called it Java Home and made a mistake in Home, put an N instead of an M, and it's the difference between these two environments, we can capture that nuance within that environment. We can tokenize it, and we can deploy for that environment. So every time we caught a mistake, we fixed that mistake, and we kept the deployment. We got to a point where now, sorry, I was mentioning to Gwen earlier, we started losing money on this application, actually, the application deployment, because we went from one person assuming taking 2 to 3 hours to deploy, to about 4 people using automation to deploy it, because it required a lot of attention to fix all that stuff. And by the end of the day, last week, I think they did a deployment in one of the QA environment. They did it on their own without the help of my team, and it took them 1 hour and 45 minutes, much faster than what they were doing before. And including in that time, all the prep work, they always never counted, and they did it the night before. The prep work is doing the backup of the directories, deleting files, moving files around. So we really did a lot of saving in there, and now this tool became their primary tool, that user group primary tool for doing the deployment, using combination of RNM and RPD, which is, for me, is a great success. I even like, my best experiences is when I go with the teams to talk to their boss, and they're the ones doing the talking about the benefit of the tool and how great it is. Because eventually we're going to have to buy more licenses for this application, and we need the good discussions with their bosses. The other application I talked about is Zero Manual Intervention. And one more that we just produced is generic framework for automation. And what I mean by generic framework for automation, we created 5 RPM tasks with their 5 RPD matching tasks. And these tasks are copy a file, untar or unzip a file, backup, run a script, and delete directory. So these are taken and they're put into what we call a plan. We create a run, and this enables people with no automation expertise at all to use the automation tool to do their common tasks, common simple deployment tasks. And we're hoping to see a lot of growth from that front around the utilization of this tool, because every time someone uses one automation, it counts as one application being automated and adds to my portfolio of number of applications being automated. What's next for us? Next for us, we want to move into continuous integration. Continuous integration is, I don't know if everybody has heard of the most famous integration tool around Jenkins. So that's one of the commonly known continuous integration tool. A lot of developers think that they do continuous integration, but most of the time, all what they do continuous build. They're not doing truly continuous integration. To do continuous integration across the board, you have to be able to orchestrate everything from the inception of the source code, to the inspection of the source code, to the unit test of that build, the creation of the build, the testing of that build, and the unit testing and the component testing, and then automate the regression testing. Then once you've got all of that, have your golden binary image passed on to operation and say, please deploy that to me. It's a big challenge because today within a big organization like ours where we have 10,000 IT people, no one owns that responsibility of continuous integration. So we're breaking new grounds. We want to establish brand new practice around enterprise continuous integration so we can have a tool that brings all these tools together in order to do the deployments. So now we're starting this brand new initiative to do this activity, and we're working with some technology partners that are responsible for the other tools that they have, which is the source code management tools, the build management tools. So we create a service that can be consumed by our CIOs to do deployment in production. And the key idea here is we're not creating a standard, we're creating a service. If we create it as a standard, no one would want to use it because they're going to say, you're forcing my hand to do something. If we create it as a service, then people can subscribe to that service in order to get to the holy grail of continuous deployment to production, where if you have an idea, you create a piece of code for it, for a micro app, and 3-4 hours later, it's out there in production being used. So that's the dream that we're selling of what we want to achieve. This is the roadmap that we conceived that is going to help us to achieve that. Most everybody talks about this, the dynamic cloud capability. When you talk about, I don't know if a lot of people there is a story about Netflix. From Netflix perspective is the minute they find that there is a need for workload, they spin up a new CPU with the application loaded on it, and they start provisioning for that peak time. But to get there, there's a lot of steps that we have to go through. From a cloud, we need a mature cloud environment to be in place. To get there, we're working towards that to achieve that cloud capability where we can do provisioning of the IaaS and PaaS stack. And then once we have that in place, we need to look at building that capability from a DevOps perspective, and we're moving into that continuous integration to enable that continuous delivery. And once we get to application management, this is where the continuous the feedback starts coming into place to say, I need more resources, I need help, I need to scale out, I need to do more stuff, and understand what the application needs are to get us to that dynamic cloud capability. This is what we're trying to go. It's going to take us a few years. And probably if I come back next year to do the same presentation, this will be something completely different because on a daily basis, we're learning new things. And we're probably going to be changing our minds as we go. I think this is the end of the presentation. If any questions? I need tech help to get it working because every time I go, probably need to split the screen into one screen or instead of extended screen to get the video. This is DevOps problem. Just escape out of it, probably. Go ahead.
You mentioned that you are still planning to support agile development. So, but my question is, from what you have described so far, it looks and sounds like a very good, very well-regulated process with strictly enforced roles and responsibilities, like promotion to key production. Agile, by definition, maybe I'm wrong, but Agile allows to relax certain rules and it allows developers to do their work faster. And it's only happening when some rules are relaxed. So in your plans for Agile support, how do you know right now? Can you talk about what are you planning to do? What is the vision?
So the question is, if I understood correctly, is about how do we enable Agile development with the iteration that they need. So being from IT Ops, really my input, how it comes, I don't care what form it comes into. What I want to improve for them is cycle time and move them along the development pipeline. So this is my objective, is cycle time. Because I could have one of the development teams coming in with waterfall, for example, and their cycle time is they want to deploy once every 3 months. But the minute they want to deploy, they want it quickly. They want it to happen. So my responsibility is improving that cycle time to get them to where they want, not necessarily just Agile. Agile is basically doing exactly the same thing in my mind like waterfall, but with the smaller iterations, because you're taking a whole cycle of software development lifecycle from requirement, design, development, implementation, unit testing, and you're saying, I'm going to do it in a 2-week sprint. And that cycle time is 2 weeks. So enable that cycle time for them to happen in 2 weeks. Did I answer your question? No, we cannot. No, we cannot relax the rules. We have to work within the boundaries of the rules so we don't go into any audit violation. Because audit violations such as segregation of duty and responsibilities are very severe for a bank. They take your license away from being able to operate in a market. Yeah. Did it work? Okay, so do you want to help me out with it? So we'll pause and unpause. Do you mind pausing for a second? So this is where we stopped earlier, and we're trying to get that video. Thank you, Max, for getting the video going. And this in here, it shows, this is a BSA NSH job, basically looking on a continuous basis, looking for a file. And it found that file in the repository saying, I'm ready to deploy. I'm going to go to the next play. So the deployment immediately is kickstarted, and that information is sent via the API interface to the next tool. So in this case, do you mind pausing for a second? This is if people are familiar with the RLM interface, this is actually the RPD interface. And the RPD interface, it shows that this file came in and it's ready to be deployed. And here we're looking at a lot of the configuration information for that application because it's telling it actually it wants to deploy in that development maintenance environment. This is where the developer says they want to deploy. So an email notification is immediately generated, and the developer is immediately aware, or the build master is immediately aware that there is a deployment that is kickstarting. And I'm actually on that distribution list, and one of my team members said, do you want me to take you off of the distribution list? I said, are you kidding me? These are the best 2 emails I get during a day. It's like there is a deployment that started and a deployment that's finished. I love that, and that's what I wait for during the day. Do you mind going? So the benefits from this is we have an integrated IT ops processes within the SDLC. We support the Agile for daily builds. So if they have daily builds, we can deploy on a daily basis. We have always-on detection of new builds. And for the developers themselves, we save them on average 2 to 3 minutes per deployment. That might not sound a lot, but when you're doing hundreds of deployments for an application, these minutes, they do add up from a development perspective, and they do appreciate the time back. And one of the benefits that is not listed in here that came up after the presentation was going, actually the build master said, now I actually can go on vacation. I don't have to train anyone. The automation tools knows all my passwords, especially that week they had a deployment where the implementer typed the wrong password, and the application was down for about a couple of hours because they didn't know why it was down. So everything is in the tool. It knows what to do, and it just keeps going. Yeah, so this is the next level of deployment where we're going from development to QA. And this is where BSA starts looking. Oops, that's me that caused it. I pressed the wrong button. Yeah, just fast forward a bit. I think it's 1.5 minutes. Yeah, here we go. I don't know why I have. So in QA, we did the same thing. This is where the BSA tool picks up and now goes into it tells it what environment we're going towards to. So we have the deployment initiated in the environment, in the right environment. If you don't mind, keep going. It tells us what environment is going to. This is a longer video here. If we notice here, we have a lot of properties that we capture around the environment. So if any of these properties is different for different environment, we just capture that property and we pass it on. This is the tokenization for the scripts. That makes, I don't know if you guys heard this week, there was a lot of talk about scripts. It makes the management of the scripts a lot easier because I don't have to have 5 versions of the same script. One version of the same script can handle tons of environments at this point because everything is tokenized and the information is being passed. It shows us the step-by-step execution of every activity that's happening, and that can be monitored and can be mined as well. And then we have every environment has its parameters as well at the environment level, and we measure the execution time for every activity that we're doing. The next part of this video goes through, so this is for the zero manual intervention, and once we have that break into that process, and all the logs are captured as well. This is key, because if something goes wrong into the implementation, we want to know what went wrong and be able to trace it back. So from here is we have consistent deployment that is achieved. We do it exactly the same thing over and over and over. We have reusable deployment code. We have zero manual intervention to dev and QA. And now we have people that can go and do some other stuff that is more higher value for the organization. My estimate is each individual that we hire within the organization on the deployment services side could know at a max of 10 applications, 10 to 15 applications. If we do automation for these, for zero manual intervention, I believe that at one time during a month, they can only work about 3 applications at a time. I believe I can free up about 1 FTE for every 3 applications to do something else. We're not saying about getting rid of people here. We're talking about giving them more time to do other stuff, because they have knowledge for 15 applications. I'm only automating 3 at this point. If we keep going. Okay. So this is the same automation now is going to execute, but it's going to use RPM on top of it. This is going to the production, and we just let it run max. Essentially, now from RPM, I can go to RPD, call exactly the same automation that was used 100 times in dev and QA. It's tested, it's trued, has no bugs into it. We worked all the kinks out. Just let it go. It just goes on its own, this one. And we configure it into RPM. We create the templates for it. And now user, with a simple document, can go follow these instructions and do the deployments. So this is RPM that leverages the same automation. Here we go. And I think that's the end of it. There we go. These are the benefits. So now we have consistency across all environment, and we have a short learning curve for doing a deployment at the end of the day, because we're leveraging the automation. Okay.
In the automation, I heard that you said only WAS was kind of automated. So if an application characteristically have like an IHS or a web layer where some configuration changes are required, a WAS for an actual, WAS
Yeah.
deployment. Then let's say that at least at a minimum will have a database component.
Yeah.
So is your current implementation with the 18 applications, does it spawn across more than one tech stack, or just WAS at this point?
Good question. So the question for those that are in the back, if you didn't hear the question, is does the automation span more than one technology, or is it only for WebSphere? Currently in my portfolio, we're doing changes to Microsoft IIS. We're doing changes to IHS, IBM IHS web servers. We're doing SQL updates. We're doing Jasper. We're doing Spinego. Any stack. If it has a command line interface, we can do it. We can't do any GUI stuff, but we can do anything on the command line interface. Just tell me what it is, and we just make it happen.
Are those all in an orchestrated fashion, or
Yeah, so everything is done in orchestrated fashion. So the question is, do you orchestrate the activity? Yes, we orchestrate the activities. Actually, my biggest deployment has about 48 steps within it to do the application, the deployment. And pieces of these applications are dependent on each other, where one task has to be finished before another task can start. And we have these dependencies all created within the application, where we can run things in parallel and pause the deployment, let something else finish, then start the deployment again, using a combination of semaphores and combination of automation monitors within RPM. Yeah.
Going back to the segregation of duties, that's an interesting topic which
Yeah.
I'm also trying to challenge within my organization. So, a decade back, a developer has to log into the box, like a production box or a UAT box, had to do something in terms of like a post-deployment activities or whatnot. Gone are those days, right? So now we are able to, in form of either an IaaS or a PaaS, we are able to provision a pristine environment with the complete stack.
Yeah.
So that means, and then if we can figure out an automated way to deploy the code and the configurations. So from the development to QA, even though it's a controlled environment or to production as a controlled environment, as long as there is an integration with the change management system, even if the developer is just clicking saying that I want to promote what I deployed into dev to UAT, as long as there is a check there saying that is there a valid change record, and the change record has to be approved by whoever is the standard
Yeah.
list of approvers. That is what I am kind of challenging back, pushing back on what exactly was the segregation of duties, right? It might have been documented a while back in the old way of practices done, but in the newer way, I'm still trying to fight with my compliance and the risk and control officers, saying that in this new way of end-to-end touchless automation, as long as I have the specific controls of doing a check, making sure that it was a fully approved change record, and if it is the green zone associated in the change record, as long as I can verify those. So what artifact went into the lowest environment, untouched, unaltered, as long as it gets promoted,
Yeah.
I'm asking why do we need to have somebody as a QA manager or even a segregated person do it? Because I'm still trying to accomplish using the controls within the automated flow.
Yeah.
Even if the developer says, okay, go and do it in the production, the next step is, okay, give me your change record. And then we take the change record, and that change record normally would have approvals from the app manager or the business manager.
We need to demonstrate, we need to be able to demonstrate without a doubt that one person that has control over the source code cannot have access to that same binary in production. So that's what we're doing with automation, is to demonstrate that capability that we're breaking into the process, and that person that created the code cannot inject something malicious into it and goes into production. Now, every company is different, and the challenge that you and I are facing, and we're facing in the DevOps world, is the opposite what God faced when he created the world. It took him 7 days to create the world, and that was an easy job for him because he had nothing. Greenfield, he started with a greenfield organization. We live in a brownfield. We have to be able to manage applications, and we don't have the luxury of nuking an environment and restarting from scratch. We have to be able to go in on top of an existing environment and be able to modify it and meet all the regulations. It's a tough task to do, but it's a nice challenge to have as well, and to break that challenge. I'm out of time. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Jamil, thank you.